What if I told you that Serena Williams has just made a statement that's sending shockwaves through the tennis world? According to Serena, Alex Eala is no longer just a rising star, she's becoming a serious threat that nobody should underestimate at the Canadian Open. After Eala's incredible run and fearless performances, fans are asking one big question. Is this the tournament where she shocks the world once again? Serena's bold words have sparked massive debate, with tennis experts and fans divided over what's coming next. In today's video, we'll reveal exactly what Serena said, why everyone is talking about Alex Eala, and whether the young Filipino sensation is truly ready to dominate the Canadian Open. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. There is a moment in tennis when people stop talking about a player's potential and start talking about what she might actually do to the greatest of all time. For Alexandra Eala, that moment arrived at Wimbledon, and it started with 6 words from a man who knows exactly what it takes to survive on that court. This is a really hard one. That's what Andy Roddick said on his podcast, staring down the possibility of a second-round meeting between Serena Williams and a 21-year-old from Quezon City. She can expose Serena, he said, and when a former world number 1 says that about the most decorated player in the sport's history, people listen. Because Roddick doesn't hand out warnings like that for free. He wasn't guessing either. He had studied Eala's game closely enough to explain exactly why she was dangerous. She switches directions really well, he said. She can spread the court. She can play both ways. That is the kind of movement that turns a legend's comeback into a genuine risk, especially a legend who hadn't played a competitive singles match in nearly 4 years. Roddick pointed straight at that gap in his analysis. Movement is going to be everything for her, he said of Williams. That's what we don't know yet. You don't move the same way in doubles. Certainly not the way you do in a full singles match, with someone actively trying to send you corner to corner. But it wasn't just the tennis that impressed him. Weeks earlier, Eala had lost a brutal, deciding set tiebreak to Maya Joint in the Eastbourne final, the kind of loss that can rattle a young player for months and quietly stall a breakout run before it really starts. Instead, she used it as fuel. Watching her process that loss, Roddick said, she handled it like a champion. The maturation process isn't going to take long with her. She arrived at Wimbledon carrying a 9-2 record on grass, a title in Birmingham, and a semifinal run in Berlin, where she'd taken down Elena Rybakina and another seeded opponent back-to-back, the kind of results that make a locker room start paying attention. Then the draw came out, and the tennis world genuinely held its breath. Eala was seeded 29, the first Filipina ever seeded at a Grand Slam event. Williams, entering on a wild card after 4 years away from the tour, sat in the very same section of the bracket. One more win from each of them, and it would be a second-round match on center court, the kind of collision broadcasters build entire preview shows around. Greg Ruziczki said it outright on his own show, no hedging at all. I think Serena gets through Maya Joint, and I think Eala wins her opener too. That's Serena and Eala in round 2. Another huge center court moment waiting to happen. For Eala, this was never just a tactical puzzle to be solved. It was personal, the kind of thing you don't say out loud unless you mean it. Asked on Roddick's own podcast which players she dreamed of facing, she didn't hesitate for a second. Serena Williams, she said, and Maria Sharapova, if she could pick from the past as well. Before the tournament even started, she told reporters exactly what Williams' presence on tour meant to her. It's incredible, she said. I didn't think I'd get to experience playing while Serena is still competing. She's such an inspiration. Even without ever crossing paths on court, just sharing that same space would be something to remember for the rest of my life. All Eala had to do was get past Renata Zarazua in the first round, and the dream matchup would be set in stone. Then Williams withdrew after her opening match with a knee injury, and the collision everyone had circled on their calendars quietly disappeared overnight. No second-round showdown. No center court reunion between a living legend and the player who seemed built specifically to trouble her. Just an empty slot in the drawer where a story was supposed to unfold, and a stadium full of people who would never get to see it. Here's the part most people missed in the disappointment of it all. Eala didn't need that match to prove Roddick right. She turned around and beat Maya Joint, the very same player who had beaten her in Eastbourne, and the same player who had just knocked Williams out. Then she walked onto center court and dismantled the defending champion in straight sets, becoming the first Filipino player in the Open era to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam. "I'm really emotional," she said afterward, voice breaking slightly. For someone like the defending champion, or someone like Serena, this might seem small. But growing up in the Philippines, training with my grandfather after school in ruffled socks and light-up shoes, this is everything to me. Roddick had flagged one honest weakness before any of this even happened. "She can expose Serena," he said, "but her save isn't quite there yet." It was the kind of specific, unglamorous red that separates real analysis from empty hype, and it turned out to matter more than anyone expected. Because weeks later, Eala walked into Washington and won her first WTA 500 title, serve and all, proving that the exact gap Roddick had identified was already closing fast, right in front of everyone. It's worth sitting with how unusual that kind of praise really is. Roddick spent his career sharing locker rooms and practice courts with players who could hit a ball harder than almost anyone alive, and he doesn't say she can expose the greatest of all time about many of them, let alone about a 21-year-old still finding her footing on tour. When he talks about Eala, he isn't talking about potential in some vague, someday sense. He's talking about a specific set of tools, the footwork, the redirection, the willingness to change direction mid-rally, that translate directly into trouble for any opponent, no matter how many Grand Slam titles sit in their trophy case. And that's really the story underneath the story. Everyone wanted the Williams match because it was the obvious headline, the kind of matchup that writes itself before a ball is even struck. But the more interesting thread was always what Roddick saw in Eala's game months before the rest of the tennis world caught up. He wasn't reacting to a highlight reel. He was reading footwork patterns, shot selection, and composure under pressure, the unglamorous details actual coaches and former pros notice long before the casual fan does. So the match everyone wanted never actually happened. But the warning Roddick gave before a single ball was struck ended up describing exactly what kind of player Eala was becoming, whether Williams was standing across the net or not. A former world number one looked at a 21-year-old from Quezon City and said she could genuinely trouble the most dominant player the sport has ever produced. Within a month, that same 21-year-old had beaten the woman who beat her idol, dismantled a defending champion on the biggest stage in tennis, and lifted a title of her own. The girl who used to train after school with her grandfather in the Philippines isn't chasing the moment anymore. She's setting it one tournament at a time. And if Roddick's read on her game was right about the movement, the range, and the way she handles pressure under lights, then Wimbledon 2026 wasn't the end of the story at all. It was only the first chapter of one the entire tour is going to be talking about for years to come. Alexandra Eala didn't get to face Serena Williams that day. But watching what she did instead, it's hard to argue she needed to.